Thank you guys for coming. Oh my God, this is so exciting. I am so excited to be here, and what an amazing turnout we have today. Happy International Women's Day 1, and we are so excited to be celebrating the book launch of Your Mom Races Rally. And there are a few things that I am passionate about, and of those things are car culture, motorsports, motherhood, womanhood, and dismantling the patriarchy. So when I was approached by the lovely Emma Hunter and Carrara Media about Kelly Conroy's book launch, I said, hell yeah. For those of you who don't know these highly influential faces up here, I'm Marvel Alexis McElrath. I am a creative director and storyteller focused on the intersection of cars, motorsports, and the culture around them. Kelly Conroy is a mother, author, and rally racer. Her debut memoir, Your Mom Races Rally, documents her late-in-life entry into grassroots rally racing while navigating motherhood, challenging the idea that parents, especially moms, must give up adventure. Alana Scher is a veteran automotive journalist, editor, and host. She's also my coworker. Her career spans her current post as the senior features editor at Car and Driver, a stint at Hot Rod, and other major enthusiast outlets. She's known for her deep technical knowledge and storytelling, bringing decades of hands-on experience to the automotive industry and motorsports. Leslie Hanna is an automotive content creator and lifelong car and motorsports enthusiast. She works to make wrenching on cars less intimidating for other enthusiasts and is best known for the restoration of her 1985 Toyota MR2. And she is one of the newest contributors to The Autopian. So make sure to go read her newly launched article. So before we get started with the conversation, I want to start with Kelly reading us a short excerpt from the book. So Kelly, take it away.
You guys, I was doing pretty well backstage, and then as I was walking out, I was like, oh, I'm going to burst into tears. I'm like about to read my book, a part of my book for the first time in front of people. So please bear with me if I do burst into tears. But I'm reading from chapter 12, which is titled Values. And this section is about us, my husband and I, deciding to buy a rally car for me. There were plenty of reasonable answers for why I needed a dedicated rally car. But the answer beneath them all was because I wanted one. That may sound spoiled, but for a girl who grew up being told to just be grateful despite her unmet needs, for a woman who learned to suppress her desires in order to fulfill others, and for a mother who was suffocated by the insatiable wants of everyone else, buying my own rally car was an act of revolution. A woman who acts on her desire is a danger to the systems that demand her compliance and her sacrifice. These systems depend on her willingness to ignore her needs, her exhaustion, and her body. They depend on her time and labor. They depend on her belief that it is noble to toil away in self-sacrifice to serve other people's wants. But desire is human, individual, and alive. To feel the burn of desire is to acknowledge your life force, your potential, your mortality. Desire asks us to feed ourselves with whatever it is we are craving. A woman who hears that call and chooses to satiate her own hunger will not be persuaded to starve again. A woman who acts on her desire reclaims her energy from the systems that use it as fuel. She cuts off its supply. And if enough women do the same, the entire system atrophies. For most of my life, anytime a desire filtered into my body, I experienced something akin to automatic electroshock therapy in my mind. Wanting, the systems which trained my mind reminded me, was not for good girls. Instead, I waited around for someone else to fulfill my wants or to tell me when I was allowed to fulfill my own. I agonized over buying myself anything, socks, face wash, a haircut, believing I needed permission to take care of myself in any way. To buy a rally car simply because my body wanted the fun and adrenaline and adventure was like toppling a dictator. Thank you.
Thank you, Kelly. So, when I was reading this book, there's a specific frequency that really cuts through the noise of identity. And, despite having a completely different upbringing from Kelly, I'm a first-generation American with immigrant parents. Shout out to all the kids of immigrants. I grew up on the East Coast, and we seemingly have about a decade age gap, but we're not going to do the exact math on that. But, so many of the experiences that you shared just felt like my own. And there's an internal monologue in the book about invisible labor and cultural scripts that just resonated so deeply with me. And it really just proves that these hurdles aren't personal, they're structural. So, Kelly, I related so much to your early memories of attending events like Monster Jam or motocross only on the arm of a guy. And, you kind of touch on the trope of not like other girls. And you kind of wrote that you were wearing the not like other girls as a badge of honor and as a compliment, kind of believing this lie that femininity was inferior and that being like the guys was the only way to be taken seriously. So the title Your Mom Races Rally immediately challenges the masculine stereotype. How would you say your story redefines what a racing person looks like in the modern era?
That's such a big question.
I've come fully loaded, so I hope all of you are ready.
I have 2 young kids. I have an 8-year-old and a 4-year-old, so apologies if this doesn't land with everybody. But I think a lot about the movie Ratatouille and the chef who's like, anyone can cook. And that's kind of how I feel about now that I have entered this world that I thought was so unattainable and so not for me. And I have found community and I have gained skills. And having a book launch with my rally car in the front, I really feel like what I really want is for motorsports to be more accessible, especially to women and people who are typically not represented in motorsports, because I found so much empowerment and so much belonging here that I want to make it more accessible to women so that they can experience the fun and the joy and, yeah.
Alana, Leslie, I'm curious about where your collision with the text was. Like, where did your specific life experiences hit the same roadblocks that Kelly describes?
Well, I was a late bloomer as well, so that was kind of the thing that really, my mic's not on.
Is it?
Now it is. Yay, okay. So I was a late bloomer, much like Kelly. I was not somebody who grew up in a car family, and so I definitely had to make a conscious decision that it was something that I wanted to do almost as a grown-up, I mean, like I was in my 20s when I got my driver's license, and I was just telling Kelly backstage I was 30 when I learned how to drive stick, and that it's just not something that somebody handed to me to do. And it's not even something I knew about to want to do. I mean, I'm sure that there were a lot of people in my childhood who would have been happy to take me dirt biking or something, but I didn't even know that was something that people did. And certainly it was not something that I ever saw any girls doing. So sometimes you have to discover something and then figure out your own path into it.
Okay, now you can hear me. Hi.
You made me feel less alone.
Yeah, we're in this together. So I definitely connected to your book in a very different way than Alana, because I'm also a mother, but I also grew up in a car enthusiast family. So a lot of what I connected to in reading Your Mom Races Rally was kind of this internal struggle with a loss of identity in becoming a mother, because I'm a more recent mother. I have a 1-year-old, and he's my only child. So I was kind of going through that transition in the process of reading it, and I'm still going through that transition now. And I had a very similar emotional experience to you in my postpartum life, and it felt very validating to read, because early motherhood is so isolating. Even if you have a community of people around you, it's one of the most isolating things that anybody can ever go through, because even if you have a community of people around you, offering a helping hand, you are the only one that just became a mother. So nobody else can truly understand where you are in that moment. And in reading it, it was like I had somebody there next to me, kind of telling me, it's like, I went through this. This is what happened, this is what I felt, and it just instantly made me feel so much less alone. And it is probably one of the most treasured books I've ever read because of that, because I connected to it so emotionally. So,
Thank you.
yeah.
Wow, I love to hear that, yes. And Alana, you've written about everything from classic Mopars to Formula One. Kelly's book focuses heavily on the emotional engine. So why would you say it's so important for the automotive world to not just consider the specs and stats, but these human-centric narratives as well?
Oh, this is like my favorite topic. I think that a lot of times the people who get in positions to write about cars and racing are specs and stats type people. And those are super fun. I mean, they're great. Like, I understand why you want to write about them. I mean, first of all, they are facts that you can actually test, and then you can memorize them, and you can bring them up to your buddies at a bar and see if yours are better. But that wasn't actually what I liked about cars and car culture when I started driving and I got into learning about cars. I was really fascinated by the fact that it was this way for people who maybe weren't the most socially apt to have an entry point to making friends. I just thought that was so beautiful and so fun for me too, because I wasn't great at making friends. But if you go to a car show and you walk up to somebody, you can ask them, hey, what's your car all about? Tell me about your car. Whereas if you're, I don't know, just walking around, you can't just like walk up to somebody and be like, tell me about yourself. I would like to know about you and maybe we could be friends. But for some reason, if they have, a BMW and you like BMWs, you can say, I like BMWs too, can we be friends? And they'll be like, yeah, we should.
It's a really good icebreaker, yes. But Kelly, you spent 2 years under your BMW, Nessie, who's right in the front there. So how did the act of getting your hands dirty change your internal dialogue about what you are capable of building, not just as a racer, but as a person?
Yeah, I did not set out to work on cars. I was very interested in the racing aspect, the fun aspect. And so the fact that we ended up with a 1985 BMW that needed a lot of work was a surprise to me. And honestly, every single project that we've done, I head into it with a lot of reluctance because I don't know how to do it. I don't have a background in this. I've never worked on a car before. And it wasn't until we changed out the suspension, my husband and I changed out the suspension on the rally car ourselves. And I was terrified because I had people on the internet being like, you could kill yourself. Like, it's very dangerous. Pay a professional. And we did it ourselves, and I was so proud of us. And I realized, it's just about learning. Like, you don't have to earn having a project car by proving that you know how to have a project car. You don't have to earn a hobby. You don't have to earn an interest or a passion by proving that you can already do it. It's like, just start. Start and learn along the way. So honestly, having a rally car has instilled in me a stronger growth mindset than anything else ever did, right? It was like college, you study, you give the right answer, you just kind of regurgitate information. But learning how to work on this machine and pull it apart and put it back together, and it gave me a lot of confidence. And so now I think of myself as just a lifelong learner. Like, I can do anything. I changed the suspension on my car, what's next,
So then for women who feel like they started too late, what was the exact moment you stopped feeling like an imposter in the garage?
It's interesting. I don't feel like an imposter in the garage. I think probably because it's mostly just Russ and me together. But I think I look at myself as a lifelong learner in the garage. So I don't expect anything of myself. Even when I'm racing, all I'm expecting from myself is that I have fun and that I'm learning new skills and having an experience, right? There's that quote that's there's no failures when the goal is experience. where I do feel like an imposter is when I'm in front of somebody like at a car meet and they're like, whoa, you built this car, like you know everything about this car, and I'm like, I don't know anything about this car. So I have to reframe for myself, like it's all about meeting them on that emotional, on that human level, where it's like as much as you might know about something, it's not necessarily about proving that you're like the master of it, it's about proving that you're a human and you're learning and growing.
Absolutely, and it's impossible to know it all. And, if someone says they do, then they're a liar. But Alana, Kelly had to learn the language of mechanics. And as someone who bridges the gap between enthusiasts and engineers, why is technical literacy such a powerful tool for female autonomy?
Whoa, that's a college question.
Yeah, you had the word autonomy.
You're being
in there.
graded.
I think that learning the vocabulary for anything is very valuable. It's kind of like walking into a room. If you don't know anybody, that's very intimidating. But if you know people's names, it's much less intimidating. And so knowing the language for something is kind of like knowing the names of the people in the party.
And then this is kind of for each of you. In your careers, how has being the perpetual student in the garage made you stronger as women outside of the automotive world?
Well, so I also have a project car very similar to Kelly with Nessie. And I feel like it kind of forces you to develop an amount of resilience, especially dealing with a car that's, 30, 40 years old. Things are going to break even if you don't do anything wrong. You could be as gentle as possible with that thing, and pieces in your interior are still going to crack. You're still going to have a blown suspension. You're still going to have things cross-threaded on by a previous owner and then completely stripped, so your driver's seat is like a rocking chair right before a 3-hour drive, speaking from experience. And it forces you to develop resilience, and it also kind of makes you a lot more vulnerable, because you kind of have to accept the fact that there are things that you just simply don't know. And, I did an engine swap on my car. My engine bay was completely stripped clean. And I drive my car around all the time now. And I still feel like despite doing all of that, I am probably one of the least knowledgeable people who has done that kind of work on their car. And you just kind of have to accept that in doing that type of hands-on mechanical work, because there's just so much detail. There's so many things that could vary, even from model year to model year, that you just don't even think about. But yeah, sorry, abrupt ending.
Alana?
What I like about having spent so much time in the garage is that, first of all, just the concept that you can fix something applies to all things, not just a car. So if you start learning on a car and then a picture frame falls off your wall and you need to drill a hole and hang a new picture frame, you could do that because you're like, I'm not afraid of the drill. I can do that. I can use a tool. But it's sort of problem solving in general that I think has been very valuable to me. I am not very strong. I am not very tall. There are a lot of things on the cars that I work on that I cannot physically do without a sort of a modification. And so learning that I can do that and figuring out what that modification needs to be, whether it's something as simple as attaching two wrenches together to make a longer wrench so that I am suddenly stronger with my longer lever, or getting a nice sturdy step stool so that I can, climb over something and reach it, or that figuring out that maybe I could actually go under to reach it. That is a mindset that has been very useful to me in my career and also just in my life, because I make a lot of mistakes and I am generally incompetent, but I can solve that problem. It no longer bothers me. I can figure out how to fix the problem that is in front of me, and it has been incredibly useful, whether you're missing a airplane flight and having to make a new one, or a friend needs assistance putting their new bed together. You can do that.
Yeah, I feel like the creativity aspect of it is so huge. You look at a car and you're like, it's a machine. It's A plus B equals C. And it's like, no, especially with older cars, you have to get pretty creative. And I just love that about that. And also reducing the intimidation factor, right? You were talking about having to be on the arm of a guy to like gain entry into the motorsports world. But once you start actually working on a car yourself, learning the names, the technical like speak like you were talking about, it just reduces that intimidation factor, and it reduces the imposter syndrome, right? You're like, you gain access to this world that, you know, possibly purposely, women tend to be excluded from, right? Where motorsports is like very male dominated, so it's even though there are a lot of women involved, it's still the majority men. And so to be able to break into that with the creativity, with the knowledge, with the growth mindset, all those things are transferable throughout all of life, and also just like so empowering.
Yes, I love that we're using the mechanisms that they placed upon us against them. But Kelly, you talk about the guilt of leaving your family for rally school, but realizing that your rest and your risk are gifts to your children. Did you find that your children's perception of you changed once they saw you as a racer rather than just mom?
I think that my kids are going to see me as just mom no matter what. I think no matter who you are, right? Like I think Beyonce's kids are like, that's just my mom. But what I have seen is that their definition of what being a mom is has expanded, right? So whereas before what I was modeling for them as a mother was just someone who was constantly sacrificing, constantly like ignoring herself, constantly doing everything. I was basically their servant, right? And now they can see that that's not what a mom has to be, right? A mom gets to be a whole person. A mom gets to have boundaries. A mom gets to have passions. A mom gets to learn new things. A mom gets to be a whole person. And so that's the definition of motherhood that they're going to take out into the world. And so if you could imagine if all people thought of moms as just a whole person, a person that happens to have kids, like how much of that would change of our expectations of women and mothers, and how much of our society would sort of like rotate around that.
And Leslie, Kelly writes about Vanessa Ruck, who is an internet personality girl on a bike. And when she announced she was pregnant, you know, it was received with a lot of congratulations and high engagement. She mentioned that she kind of retained most of her sponsors and that they were very supportive of her journey. But your experience was kind of a stark contrast. You mentioned to me you saw a mass exodus of followers, and there were a lot of crude comments made, specifically about your body. So how did you navigate that psychological blow while still claiming your space?
It was definitely not easy. So my audience is roughly 85% men, and a large part of that is an age demographic that is, like 20s to like mid 30s. So it's like young men. Many of them are probably not fathers yet, and a lot of them probably don't have frequent interactions with women who are pregnant or have recently had kids. And I also feel like as a woman, or really anybody who starts making content, you're pretty much immediately signing yourself up to be criticized in virtually every single way. The tone of my voice, how I pronounce certain words. I'm from the Deep South, and I have a lot of vocal quirks that are a result of that, and I very frequently get negative comments regarding that. It's like a word that I use, that's colloquially correct where I'm from is not somewhere else, et cetera, et cetera. So I kind of knew that I would receive criticism for my body whenever I announced that I was pregnant. What I did not expect was how severely it would impact my experience with pregnancy. Because I personally considered myself to be fairly confident in how I was and how I appeared, how I felt with my physical, form, the flesh prison thing. But I feel like it's so easy to maintain that confidence, and it's really the ideal situation whenever you're surrounded by people who genuinely want you to feel good about yourself. And it was kind of in the point where prior to getting pregnant, any negative comments that I would get about my body, because they would happen occasionally, but I was able to kind of drown them out. But when you're in that state where your body is changing so rapidly, you don't know what your body is going to be like 1 week to the next. It's like, I don't want to buy clothes whenever I'm pregnant. Are you kidding me? I'm going to fit in them for a week. But you're already so emotionally vulnerable that criticism impacts you so much more. And, like so many women, I had a ton of issues with like body image, eating disorders, things like that. And it was very difficult to kind of keep those thoughts at bay, because I was even getting like DMs from people criticizing my body privately, like threats of violence even, just because I announced that I was pregnant with a child. And those comments never really went away. They only kind of started, this is really gross that I've observed this, but it's kind of started to taper once I've started getting back to my normal size again. Because like immediately after I had my son, I held on to a lot of weight because it's a common thing for women after they give birth. They just kind of hold on to it, and I was one of those women. So it had a huge uptick. So it's like you have the criticism when you're pregnant, you have your son, or my son, whatever, and you have all these adjustments to go through. You're getting virtually no sleep, your body hurts, you're wearing diapers along with your baby, and then on top of that you just have this constant stream of negativity. And not to say that it was all negative. There were definitely still people out there who were extremely positive and like very happy, and like you try to kind of cling to that, but at the same time those negative voices tend to just be so loud, because if you already have historically had those negative thoughts, your brain just likes to pick up the things that kind of align with those old thought patterns and magnify them.
Yeah, it's hard. So I mean, I'm curious what you guys are thinking. How do we shift the culture to kind of value the utility of the female body over the aesthetic of it?
I think a lot of it is viewing your body for what it can do versus what it looks like. So I'm also a power lifter. I like weightlifting. I went to Gold's Gym in Venice Beach today because I traveled in from Dallas, so that was fun. But a big part in kind of that self-acceptance for me was developing a very intense amount of pride over what I could do versus what I looked like. So, prior to getting pregnant, I'd lost almost 100 pounds via weightlifting. And a lot of that stopped being about what I looked like. And it was just like, I like picking up heavy things and putting them on the ground again. Like, it's fun. It also makes it really easy to do an engine swap. If you want to do an engine swap, get really good at deadlifting.
So Alana,
Can you come over? And,
yes.
Yeah, I got you.
Alana's going to start taking up deadlifting now.
I'll have
so
my
she
people
can
call
be
your people.
stronger for the engine swap. But Leslie and Kelly, there is a cultural tension between being a present parent and spending weekends at the racetrack or working on cars. How do we rebrand what active parenting looks like?
I think parenting is like so policed. I think typically, because it's done so heavily publicly by mothers, right? The social expectation is that moms are the primary parent. Women's bodies get policed. Our every experience gets policed, right? So every action that we take is judged by the overarching society. And so I think, first of all, shifting some of the primary parenting to the other parent publicly, right? Like I write in my book about my husband just being like praised, just showered with praise, because he was a very involved father, right? Like, oh, you took your kids your husband did the grocery shopping. He took the kids so you could take a shower, you lucky
I love when people ask when I'm traveling, like, who's going to watch your daughter? I'm like, my husband? Like the dad?
Their other parents? Yeah, and so I think, first of all, like, just shifting that, like, challenging society in general, but also, like, fathers to be more involved, more of a primary parent role. And also realizing for myself, as far as my own parenting, like, I had to realize that I can't give my kids something that I don't have. Like, I had to realize that I'm the blueprint for my kids. Like, they're going to look to me and what I do and who I am, and they're going to say, oh, that's what being a person is. That's what being an adult is. That's what being a woman is. That's what being a mother is. And I couldn't parent them from how I wanted to parent them, from the place of self-sacrifice, like complete self-sacrifice. So being able to come from a place of, like, regulating my nervous system with my own joy, having my own passions and modeling that for them, it gives them what I want for them by giving it to myself.
Yeah, and so I kind of feel like there's this constant battle between people expecting mothers to do it all, but also have nothing. And you can't have one without the other. So people expect mothers to be emotionally available, loving, nurturing, caring, attentive, but at the same time, not so attentive to where you don't put on makeup and do your hair every day, and you're not, perfectly dressed, and, your kids are perfectly squeaky clean with like rounded, filed fingernails. And learning to prioritize yourself makes you a better parent. It makes you a lot more patient, for one. Even in the year that I've been a parent, I know that even if I just take a couple of hours to leave the house, go do something by myself, and come back, it's like I am infinitely more patient with that child. I'm like, oh, you want to try to roll off of the changing mat? No big deal. I was actually doing that like the day before I left. I was having to like pin the kid down. But it's a big lesson in learning how to prioritize yourself. And even outside of motherhood, just as like a womanhood type of thing, that duality still exists to a different severity in one realm or the other. But there's just so much pressure on women to perform in so many different ways that we receive so much undue criticism whenever we act in a way that is not perceived as like a normal thing to do. So whenever I was, very freshly postpartum, I went to a 3-day long media event that was local to where I lived, but it was still an all-day thing. And I was, same questions, oh, who's watching the baby? I'm like, his dad? Like, it's Saturday. He doesn't have work. Like, what? I didn't marry a loser. Like,
yes, 1,000%. None of us did. We
for the record.
Confirmed. But Alana, we spoke before the panel, and you mentioned that the NHRA recently updated their rules around pregnancy. Can you speak a little bit more about this? Because I thought this was actually really interesting.
Yeah, this was something I hadn't even really thought about. But if you look at the rules for a lot of different motorsports, the points are attached to the driver. So I think everyone here probably follows motorsports, but real quick, if you don't, each race you get points. At the end of the season, simplified, the one with the most points becomes a champion. So the points are attached to the driver in NHRA. And there are some clauses in the NHRA rules that say, like, if a driver gets in a bad accident and has to be temporarily replaced with a substitute driver, that substitute driver's points still go to the initial driver. But pregnancy was not included in those reasons. So if a driver got pregnant and had to step out of the car, their team would probably lose any championship hopes that they had. And if you think about that, you can see how quickly that would affect a sponsor wanting to have a female driver of childbearing age. And it also affects a driver's ability to start a family. It's not like you can just say, like, oh, well, let's just have this kid in the off season,
That's not that easy to plan.
So very recently, I think 2 years ago, because there are so many women who race NHRA. Drag racing is the only motorsport where women have been champions in every, like, the highest possible field and have been doing so since the 60s. So it's there have been a lot of women racing. They do very well. They win, and they were not able to, like, they all left to have kids. If you look at the history, Ashley Force left so that she could have kids. Courtney Force left so that she could have kids, and they kind of just didn't come back. So they very recently changed the rules because a driver, Leah Pritchard, and some other drivers who weren't even planning to have kids, but like Erica Enders is a pro stock racing champion. She was a big name on this. They fought to change the rules so that pregnancy is now covered under those clauses. So a female driver who decides, who gets pregnant and wants to have a child can have a substitute driver come into her car. The points still go to her team, and she can still win a championship that way. So it is a huge deal, and it's something that I really hope other motorsports look at.
And like, yeah.
Did I do that
Long
right?
time coming. You did it right. Correct.
I just think that's such a fascinating example, like what a metaphor for the fact that like the rule book was written without women in mind, and women are trying to play this sport without having been considered at its conception, and they're having to like find all of the nooks and crannies where they can participate, and like which loopholes and how to manage their own personal lives, their own biological lives around these rules that were written, like not even thinking about them, let alone possibly like intentionally excluding them. And then the way, like the power that women have to change the game, right? Where it's like, I'm gonna force you to consider me. And making that change for all other drivers that come after them, like what a gift. And it's this small section, right, where you're like, it's motorsports, but it's like, it's an example that can be applied across the board. And that was it was crazy to me that it was like that late. It was like 2024 when they changed those rules. Like, come on, get on board. But also, like, that's what we're up against. It's 2026, and there are still plenty of places where the rules were not written for women, and we are doing our best, but it's stacked against us. And so, any of those little incremental changes, like, I just take that as inspiration. And yeah.
No, I completely agree, and I love to hear it. So we need more of it, definitely. But Kelly, I wanted to kind of switch gears a little bit. So funny. I love how you talk about Russ in this story. Russ is Kelly's partner, husband, who's sitting right in the front row here. I won't make him stand up.
Kids?
Applause for Russell.
Where are the kids? No. But
He lost him.
He's gone. He's embarrassed. But the level of support he has for you and your well-being is something I think Alana, Leslie, and I all feel fortunate to have in our own individual relationships. We found partners who don't just allow our passion, but are truly invested in it. And there is this part in the book where you start engaging with other people in the racing community who are, you're kind of sharing anecdotes of their experiences. And in this specific interaction, it says, "We just got back from Dirtfish," I explained, "and now we're trying to find a car to buy and turn into a rally car. I think you need to turn your W upside down." Chris looked at me seriously, letting the hard period at the end of his statement land. "What do you mean?" I asked. "You keep saying we, but you need to turn your W upside down into me." I would have fallen to the floor if I hadn't been seated at my desk. He was right. I talked about my rally journey like a group project. Did I need to separate myself from my family to do this? Chris's point about we sent me reeling into an existential crisis. If I was truly doing rally to reclaim myself, then why had the entire journey been a we so far? If I was really trying to find myself again, would I have to find her alone? And I'll be so for real right now, like this infuriated me. And I think this goes back to the notion in the book, and Leslie had mentioned it as well, around isolation and how, especially having to go at things alone, like we do in Motherhood, where it's like, no, you got this. Like, you can handle it. It's like, no, but I don't want to handle it. Like, I want some help and support. And it's just not how we're wired as humans. And, you say it perfectly in the book. Life is a team effort. We're social creatures. When we're isolated from community, we're at a disadvantage. And racing is a team sport. And I do think there are these solo moments, before we find that support, and it's a real struggle. And I commend anyone who is currently in that stage, because it's so hard. And I think if the closest people in your life have kind of zero interest, zero investment in what you're doing and the things that are special to you, I think it's probably a bigger red flag that we need more time here to talk about.
Couples therapy.
Yeah, I think I'm taking sessions if anyone wants to do therapy after this. But I've seen this meme because I'm chronically online, and it says something like, women who hate men have the most supportive men in their lives. And I think this is very true. And, I don't accredit my husband to the successes I have and the opportunities I've been afforded, but it would be remiss to not shine a light on him and the people in our lives who, without that mental and physical support, things would just not be possible. So for each of you, how vital is that baseline of support in what you do?
Right. So it has been kind of the catalyst that has gotten me to where it's the reason why I'm sitting in front of all of you guys yapping into a microphone. My husband and I met because of our mutual love of cars. So he kind of understood what it was like to, be an enthusiast and to get a project and to kind of start working on it. And it was very hard to kind of detach him from specifically my MR2 because I have a lot of cars that we share, but the MR2 is more specifically mine. And kind of having to detach him from it and have it feel like purely my thing was very difficult at first because he was a lot more mechanically experienced, and it kind of encouraged me to build a lot of that confidence. A lot of it is why I started producing content, because I was like, oh, I'm learning while I'm doing this. Why don't I learn with an audience? Why don't I try to teach other people while I'm learning too and make it less intimidating? And his support has kind of, encouraged me to, travel and, start writing and things like that. And also the support of my friend group. I've had so many late nights in the garage until like 2 or 3 in the morning where I just have friends come over and they're like, you can't figure this out, but I might be able to. And it's just the sense of community that you build is ultimately what kind of props you up. So if you do ever get into those situations where you start to get kind of pulled back down, your floor isn't as low. You kind of have those people there to kind of support you up, so that way you're not just like flopped over on the floor, just kind of like mumbling to yourself about needing a nap. So.
At the very beginning of this, you talked about going to do cool car stuff like on the arm of a boy. And I think that there's a really big difference between being the audience for a man who's doing something cool versus being a contributor doing something cool with a man. And as a teen, I watched a lot of boys skateboard, but nobody ever was like, do you want to try skateboarding? And I was like, I can't do that myself. But with my own partner Tom, we met because he came and helped me build an engine. I was a real beginner, so I was definitely learning from him. There was no way I could not have done it by myself. I tried, and that was, what encouraged me to ask for help, because it is not actually something that's that easy to do from a book. I'm sure some people can, but I could not. But I've always been able to be a part of it. I am turning wrenches and I am working on the car. And now, it's been 25 years. So nowadays when something breaks, I'm like, oh yeah, you got time? You fix it. I got no pride in it anymore. I'm like, yeah, you can work on it. I'm just going to go drink margaritas. But in the very beginning, it was really important to me to be there in the garage. Anything that was happening on my car, I wanted to be a part of and have a say in. And I think that having a partner who was totally down with that and was willing to have the project take longer so that I could be a part of it was really, really special. And I encourage everybody to have that, find that, demand that.
Demand that. Love that.
Yeah, it's the baseline. It's the operating baseline for what you should want in a partner.
Yeah. I will say that for anybody who reads this book, the way that Russ comes off in this book is exactly how he is in real life. And I wrote so much about him because he was such an important part of the story, but also because I realized, because I have such a supportive partner, it's a blind spot for me. when I meet women who don't have partners who are that supportive. Like, I forget that that's unfortunately not the norm. And so I hope that Russ serves to inspire. But also, like, he saw me before I became a mom. Like, he knew me before I became a mom. And so he watched what those social expectations did to me. Like, he watched me disappear into motherhood, right? He watched my mental health decline. He watched my physical health decline. He watched me disappear. And so he would have done anything to get me back, right? To help me be who I was, because he loves me. Because that's what you do when you love someone. And I think that speaks to the power that men have to create, I just looked at him and now I'm going to start crying. The power that men have to create positive change in the world. Because let me get sciencey and nerdy on you guys. Anthropologically, patriarchy is like a pyramid, right? So there are a few men on top, and they're basically just crushing everybody else underneath them, right? Every other like identity and underneath them. But when you look at societies who are matrifocal, who center women and children, those societies are more like circles. So it's not that, like, when people talk about matriarchy or, you know, dismantling the patriarchy, we're not saying like, screw all the men.
No,
like,
we love them.
I mean,
we need them.
We need them. We need the men. The men have tremendous power to make positive change in the world by centering women. Because in those cultures that are matrifocal, where women and children are the center of societies, everyone is better off. Everyone gets equal care, everyone gets equal contribution, like the society functions better because no one's being crushed. And so that's what happens when we center women, when we center children, when we center, you know, this sort of like matriarchal situation. And so I just want to like encourage men to say, like, you have so much power to make the world better by supporting your women and by centering us so that we can uplift the rest of society.
Let us help you. So, you know, I mentioned earlier I'm a first-generation American, and, you know, my mother immigrated from the Philippines and spent most of her life in the quiet labor of assimilation. So now I'm going to try not to get emotional. So I grew up in that shadow and afraid to take up space. So it took me a long time to get to this place, to where I am today, where I'm more confident, more outspoken, and, you know, my daughter gets to see a woman who moves freely and prioritizes joy. We aren't just racing for ourselves, we're racing for our daughters and, you know, the young girls out there who don't have to spend 30 years to find their voices. So Kelly, there's a beautiful realization in the book where you see that being feminine and being mechanical aren't opposing forces. They are the same fire. But we know that when women spend time and resources on themselves, it's often labeled as frivolous or distractions from the family. So how do you answer the critics or even that internal voice who say that spending family time or money on a rally car is a luxury you shouldn't afford, rather than a necessary investment in your own self-worth?
Yeah, the term frivolous kind of like came to me in writing this book, because that's very much the internal word that was popping up. Was like, it's so frivolous to pursue rally driving out of nowhere as a 38-year-old mother. Like, what business do I have doing this? And I realized I actually really want to reclaim that word, because I think it's used to like discredit women. Right? Like, it's always the frivolous woman. Like, have you ever heard a man described as frivolous? Right? It's like, oh, the frivolous woman who spends money on whatever, like goes shopping or goes on a girls' trip or whatever it is that might be bringing her joy. It's like we're villainizing the joy of women by calling it frivolous, which is the literal definition is just like has no serious purpose or value. So that's like saying that a woman's joy, a woman's like self-esteem, a woman's personhood has no serious value. So I really want to reclaim that word frivolous. I think if at the end of the day I'm on my deathbed and people were like, God, she was so frivolous, I'd be like, hell yeah, I was. And it was great. It was a good time.
And she had a good time doing it. But okay, so we're kind of getting towards the end, but I do want to take this time to open up the floor for any questions. If there, I see one hand raised. Okay, sir.
What piece of advice to the next generation of women who are considering any sort of role beyond their life? What would that be?
Let's. I feel like I like this order.
Of course
working
you
for
do.
us.
'Cause
Leslie, go.
I would definitely say to not let what other people think about what you're doing impact what you dream of doing. I was somebody who was very obsessively focused on having a high earning career in a field that earned a lot of respect. I was very locked into always being one of the most outspoken people in the room because I felt like that's what I had to do to earn the respect and favor of other people, especially the men around me, because I thought that if they viewed me highly, then I would succeed. And once I kind of started removing that expectation from myself and my actions and what I did, and I just started acting frivolously. I started doing the things I wanted to do. I started, following the career path that I wanted to. If I wanted to wear cute little bow heels while sitting up here talking about my project car, I can do that. And that's okay. And doing things that bring you joy and bring you kind of life in a way, that will always be more impactful for you and will always be more sustainable and more gratifying down the line. So just go for it, I guess.
I'm stealing my advice from a motorcycle racer named Mary McGee. She was one of the first female motorcycle racers in the 50s. She rode the Baja solo. She was incredible, and she had a really good time doing it. But she was known for saying, say yes. Just say yes. If somebody asks you, do you want to learn how to ride a motorcycle? Say yes. If someone asks you, do you want to drive this vintage car around the block? Say yes. Because you will figure it out. Somebody else who gets offered it has also not ever done it, and they're going to say yes, and they're going to get to do it. And to sort of put that a little bit more as an example for myself, I turned down a lot of opportunities when I was first coming into this because I felt like I was going to do a bad job at them. And I might have done a bad job at them. But what I realized later is that other people also did a bad job of it, but they at least got to say that they did the things. So what I have told people when I say like, oh, do you want to drive my World War II Jeep? And they're like, oh no, I'm worried that I'm like, you don't have to go to war in it. You can just stay in first gear and like
At least
roll.
not yet.
Yeah. Ooh, fingers crossed. But like you can just stay in first gear and roll down the block. And later, when you are at a party, you can say to somebody, you know what I did the other day? I drove a World War II Jeep. And you don't have to tell them that you stayed in first gear if you don't want to. Like, you still drove a World War II Jeep. And so that is how I've been trying to approach things when I get opportunities now, and how I want other people to approach things when they get opportunities. Is like, you can do it. You're writing the story. You can say what happened.
This is good advice, guys. I'm going to take some notes. I think my advice this isn't specific to automotive and motorsports, but my advice to anybody, no matter what your age, is to take your intuition seriously. Like, there was no reason for me to pick up rally racing, other than this little voice in my head that was like, but what if you did? Like, I think you should. And I was like, I don't know anything about it. And it has taken me not just here in front of you guys, but it has taken me so many amazing places. And it's so cheesy, but I'm like, I know that this is just the beginning. It has transformed my life in so many ways. And there's no logical train of thought behind it. It just was 100% like me hearing my intuition and taking it seriously and following it. And I think there's no telling what your life could turn into if we really trusted ourselves.
My thing would probably just be lean into the duality of yourself. Just because we all like cars, we like motorsports, we're car girls, but like we also have other interests. I was telling everyone the other day, I came up in fashion, and I still like those things. And, you don't have to pick between girlhood and motorsports. Like, I think the beauty of it today, and it's just expanding even wider, is like we can have all of these interests. Two things can be true. So don't feel like you have to pick and choose. Are there any? Oh. Okay, I see one here.
Is there one over here too? Not actually a question. I just wanted to say something to you all because I think there was a lot of discussion about motherhood and how that affects everything. But beginning, just being a woman in a space dominated by men, like spoke about the rules for the NHRA, even if a woman wasn't planning on having a child, that rule is still going to affect her. And so to have you guys all up here talking about just being a woman in this space and how challenging that is, but then the added complexity of becoming a mother and how you have to step back and reevaluate everything all over again. It's just amazing. So I just wanted to say thank you to all of you for that and giving us all the opportunity to understand a little better than we did already.
Oh my gosh, thank you so much. That's so sweet.
I happen to know that she is also a mother and has also written a book, so go ask her about it.
Gosh, incredible.
One thing every person in this room should maintain under
One thing. Okay, can I give you three? I'll give you three. Tires, because they do go bad. Battery, they also go bad, and they cause a lot of weird problems when they do. And fuel line, because you don't want it to catch on fire.
Like taking notes, fuel line.
I will second that tires are important. Please, for the love of God, make sure your tires have tread on them so you don't slide around every time it gets rainy. I would also say if you park your car in the sun, to get a cover for your windshield so that way the plastics in your interior don't age prematurely and crack, and then you don't have some poor schmuck buy your car 40 years later and they're like, why are all my plastics disintegrating? So buy a sunshade. They're really cheap and it'll keep your car a lot cooler in the summer, which is really nice, especially because LA is so nice and sunny. So I'm sure all of your cars get very, very hot if you park them outside.
My vintage car is a little different because it's meant to get real messed up. So I mean, I learned this honestly on my daily driver, was oil, motor oil. I had in my car, just it's a Subaru. I did not know it burns up Subaru engines, just burn up motor oil. I was driving around with no oil for a long time. And same with rally driving. It's something people will change out their oil after every single race. So that's super, super important. And honestly, real easy lift. Anybody that has never worked on a car, you can change your own oil. I promise. It's very empowering. And then one of the projects that we did that actually made a big difference for our 40-year-old car was just changing out all the bushings. Just the little, it was a hard project and it was boring because you can't see it from the outside, but it made a really big difference just in how everything kind of fit together.
Can I add something?
Yes, go, add it.
I will
Down a rabbit hole.
I will also say inspecting your suspension and steering components, which I guess is part of suspension, will make a huge difference in how your car handles. And if your car is really scary, whenever you're going around a corner, you could have something like a blown shock. Or, for example, I had an NC Miata that I bought brand new, and in 30,000 miles, all four of the shocks blew, and my bump stops looked like shredded hot dogs. So that made the car...
I don't like that visual.
No, it was very unpleasant. So it made the car very scary to drive. And if I had inspected my suspension whenever it started getting freaky, I would have not been driving around on 4 blown shocks in my new Miata.
Yeah, I think we covered it, but tires and motor oil was definitely at the top of my mind. But there was another question out here.
If you were gifted a car tomorrow, what would it be?
One car. I'm joking. For the sake of time.
Mine would easily have to be a 2005 Ford GT in red with white racing stripes because it is the car that I saw as a little girl that made me realize that I loved cars, and it incited the passion in me, and it is why I'm sitting in front of you all today.
I mean, I feel greedy even answering this question because between me and Tom, we have, I think at the moment, 17 cars. But there's space.
I thought I
There's
had a
space
lot.
for
Good
more.
Lord.
I would like a last generation Viper. That is. I had a long-term one when I worked at Roadkill. I cried when I gave it back. It is a perfect automobile, and I miss it.
This question's hard for me because I still don't know very much about other cars. At this point, I'm like, I think my answer is like a Dakar build.
That's a good answer. My answer would be, so when my husband and I got married, the Classic Car Club of Manhattan was generous enough to loan us their E30 M3 for our wedding day. And it was a completely like specced out race car. And so I am after an E30. It's down. I gotta find one, and we're gonna make it happen one day. But that's just a car that's really special to me, and would love to have in our garage one day.
You can borrow mine.
I know. Well, that's why I'm like, we're very on brand here, BMW. So I don't want to sound like a cheeseball, but I was truly so inspired after reading this book, Kelly, and I'm even more inspired now from being here with all of you. I'm raising a daughter who sees me move freely in this world, and I want her to grow up in a culture where her value is measured by her input, how she steers, how she builds, and how she recovers, not by how she fits into a driver's seat. So I want to pay homage to all the women who came before us. I'm not going to rattle off the names because I'll leave someone out and then I'll feel really terrible about it later. But Kelly, your book is the first page of that new manual. And Leslie, Alana, your careers are proof that we aren't going anywhere. Thank you for showing us that the most beautiful thing about a woman in motorsport isn't how she looks in the car, it's the fact that she's the one driving it. So I wanted to thank thank the three of you for being a part of this conversation, and thank all of you for showing up here for us, for each other, and for this community. Thank you to Carrara Media for putting this together, and to Ryan Zamalan for providing the platform to tell important stories like this. We will have books for sale right in the front, and Kelly will be doing signing shortly. I think we'll also be doing our opportunity drawing per legal for a half-day rear-wheel drive program generously donated by Dirtfish Rally School, as well as an incredible $300 product credit from Motul. And I want to leave you with one more thing. Kelly's car is a metaphor for growth, but whatever vehicle that is for you, 4 wheels, 2 wheels, or no wheels at all, each step in repair along the way isn't just about fixing a bolt. It's about strengthening the architecture of our own self-worth. Thank you all for being here today.
Okay, hi everyone. It's me again. Thank you all for coming. Thank you to the panelists again. That was fabulous.
I also would love a round of applause for Emma. She put this event together.
Thank you. Thank you. But yeah, it wouldn't be possible without all of the people that are here. Thank you to O'Neill for the space. He's sitting in the back. Shout out O'Neill. And yeah.